Former US President Donald Trump and former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro have always been compared for their multiple similarities. They were both right-wing presidents with authoritarian tendencies. Both of them used unparliamentary language quite often, and both lost their respective re-election campaigns. They also both refused to concede defeat, sowing doubts over election results. And now, the Trump of the tropics has his own Capitol riots moment too. Almost 2 years to the day, thousands of Bolsonaristas emulated Trump supporters and stormed Brazilian government buildings like their northern brethren. They donned national colors and vandalized symbols of democracy. They overpowered security forces and broke into Brazil's Congress, the presidential palace and the Supreme Court. It took authorities 3 hours to clear them from the grounds. Reports say about 400 people have been arrested. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, has said the perpetrators will be punished.
Like true vandals, destroying what they found in front of them, we think there was a lack of security. And I wanted to tell you that all those people who did this will be found and punished. They will realize that democracy guarantees the right to freedom and free speech. But it also demands that people respect the institutions created to strengthen democracy. And these people, these vandals, what could we say? Are fanatical Nazis, fanatical fascists. Did what has never been done in this country.
Meanwhile, reports about how the riots were planned keep surfacing. Ads offering free transportation from different parts of the country to Brasilia have been shared on the social media. Authorities say they know who hired the buses and will investigate all the passengers. Lula da Silva has said the attack was provoked through social media networks abroad.
It's a genocide. This was provoked and stimulated, and which is still being stimulated through social networks from Miami, where he went.
Bolsonaro has been in Florida in the United States since the end of December. He left the country before Lula da Silva's inauguration on the 1st of January. Bolsonaro took to Twitter and condemned the vandalism that occurred during this attack, but called Lula da Silva's accusations of his involvement baseless. While Bolsonaro and some of his party members have condemned the violence, 3 of his sons, who are politicians, are yet to do so. Bolsonaro's nephew, in fact, was seen during the riots. He even posted a selfie. Brazilian authorities have taken several steps to bring the situation under control. Lula da Silva has ordered a federal intervention in the capital till the 31st of January. This puts Brasilia's police force under the central government's command. Brazil's Supreme Court has suspended the governor of the federal district, which houses the capital, Brasilia. He has been suspended for 90 days for failing to control the riot. The court has also ordered Brazil's military to dismantle all of Bolsonaro's supporters' camps across the country within 24 hours. The police have been told to arrest any protesters still on the streets. For more on this story, we're now joined by Amalendu Mishra, a professor of international politics at Lancaster University in the UK. Thanks very much for speaking to WION. Let me ask you this. For a long time now, as we just mentioned in that report, parallels have been drawn between Donald Trump and Jair Bolsonaro, who's also known as the Trump of the tropics. Now, we've seen virtually a repeat of Capitol Hill riots in Brazil, where the very seat of democracy has been attacked by these rioters who are Bolsonaro supporters. Wouldn't it be fair to say that Jair Bolsonaro, by repeatedly calling the elections a fraud, has enabled, encouraged and emboldened these rioters, that he is in fact directly responsible for what has happened in Brazil?
Well, thank you for the invitation. Well, it is not as simple as black and white the way one would like to portray it. Brazil has a history of distinction between left and right. When the current president Lula talks about fascist forces, this is a repeat of what was going on in Brazil from the 1930s until 1950s, when the country was effectively under a fascist dictatorship. Then we had the military take over from the 1960s until 1985. So the society has remained firmly divided, politically, racially, institutionally as well. So what we have seen here is that the emergence of a political culture that is always in support of one particular segment in the society. And when that segment loses out, it starts to attack the institutions of government or the leaders. So this has to do with politics of populism, which is very much prevalent across Latin America. And what we are seeing in Brazil has been seen in recent years in other countries such as in Bolivia and more recently in Peru. So this is something that was bound to happen. Indeed, Bolsonaro's rhetoric has fueled this kind of uprising that we have seen here, but it hasn't happened in isolation. And when you talk about his supporters wanting the military to sort of intervene in this particular political process, there is a precedence there because military has always been the front runner in Brazilian politics from the 1960s until 1985, to be precise. So this is something that was bound to happen, and by suggesting that it is only because of Bolsonaro's policies, we are sort of ignoring the very fact that a sizable number of Brazilian population feels that they have been ignored by the left-wing government in the past, and this particular government, which they accuse of being communist, would undermine their interests and values in particular.
You know, I understand the point that you're making about how this is a complex issue and the incident should not be seen in isolation. But, you know, it's one thing for a set of people to feel ignored by the left wing and quite another to call the election of the country's president a fraudulent one. However, what does the road ahead look like for Lula da Silva now? He's taken over the reins of a deeply polarized country at a time of a massive economic crisis. And you have a situation where scores of these people refuse to even acknowledge his election as the president of Brazil.
Well, the problem here is that the margin of victory which Lula has is very, very thin. And secondly, many Brazilians are upset that he's someone who was convicted and was in jail for over 500 days, and he has been allowed to become the president. And that is the reason why they're asking the army to sort of take over and sort of protect the institutions of the state, so to speak. So that is number one. And second, when you talk about punishing all these miscreants, hooligans, vandals, or whatever you call, you are also further polarizing the society. So there has to be some kind of middle ground where both Lula and Bolsonaro has to come in order to make Brazil's political future a trouble-free one. Because if we have a scenario where one is attacking the other, it is one popular leader is attacking another popular leader. What we have here is the center left and the center right, both attacking each other. And that is the representation that we have in Brazil at the moment. In the past, what would have happened here is a clear military intervention supported by the United States. We saw that in Chile in 1973 under President Salvador Allende when he was removed by Augusto Pinochet. And we have had several similar instances in Central America and across Latin America. So that is not going to happen now because there is a third wave of democracy that we have in Latin America. But having said that, it is only going to muddy the water if there is no reconciliation between both left and the right. Otherwise, you'll have this musical chair of one attacking another in a regular interval of democratic elections.
Well, there is no doubt that Brazil has a complex history, but really, can that reconciliation between the left and the right happen? Because right now the country is definitely at a very delicate juncture. But on that point, Amalendu Mishra, thank you for speaking to WION.
Thank you so much.